Welcome to Military History Inside Out, located at warscholar.org. Today's invasion scenario, Cuba.
Today's episode discusses notional invasion scenarios of a specific country from ancient times through modern. This episode is not meant to support any particular political position or ideology. It is meant to educate wargamers and military history enthusiasts. Please visit warscholar.org for more information. Thank you and enjoy. The Fortress of the Antilles, a multi-epoch strategic analysis of Cuba. Introduction. The island of Cuba, the largest of the Greater Antilles, has always been the key to the New World. Its strategic position at the mouth of the Gulf of Mexico makes it a prize for any power seeking to dominate the Caribbean or the maritime approaches to North America. For a war game developer, Cuba offers a masterclass in littoral warfare, guerrilla resistance, and the intersection of geography and technology. Part 1. Modern Threats and Defensive Posture, 2025 to 2026. As we stand in the years 2025 and 2026, Cuba faces a landscape of hybrid warfare and economic strangulation. The primary military threat remains a high-intensity conventional invasion by a superior technological power, but the more immediate threats are gray zone operations, cyber attacks on the aging power grid, the use of subsea cable interference to sever communications, and the exploitation of food and fuel shortages to spark internal unrest. The defensive architecture. The Cuban Revolutionary Armed Forces, FAR, have shifted toward the War of All the People, Guerra de todo el pueblo. This is an asymmetric doctrine designed to make the cost of occupation prohibitively high. 1. Military strength and alliances. In 2025, Cuba's defense relies on a triad of regular forces, the Territorial Troop Militias, MTT, and Production and Defense Brigades. Its alliances are increasingly focused on multipolarity. Military cooperation with Russia and China provides access to electronic warfare suites and drone technology, which are critical for countering the air superiority of a Western aggressor. 2. Defending the littoral and the air. The country must defend 5,746 kilometers of coastline. Key points include the Port of Mariel, economic center, Havana, political center, and the bottleneck of the Windward Passage. In 2026, the defense of the air involves a layered approach, using Soviet-era S-125 and S-75 systems, modernized with digital tracking, alongside mobile man-pads units hidden in the karst topography of the Vinales Valley. Infrastructure and logistics. The energy infrastructure is the Achilles heel. The Matanzas supertanker terminal and the Antonio Guiterres power plant are high-value targets. A defender must prioritize distributed solar and small-scale diesel generation to maintain command and control during a sustained bombardment.
Part 2. Ancient Times, Pre-Columbian, circa 1000 BCE to 500 CE. In the ancient era, the invasion of Cuba was not a matter of steel and gunpowder, but of dugout canoes, piraguas, and the slow migration of the Guanahatabey, Siboney, and eventually the Taino. Geography and logistics. The primary transportation was the sea. The Taino, arriving from the Orinoco Delta and Hispaniola, utilized the prevailing currents. An invasion in this period was a demographic displacement. The Taino brought conuco agriculture, mounds of earth for yucca and sweet potato, which allowed for higher population densities than the hunter-gatherer Guanahatabey. Military technology. Conflict involved the macana, a heavy wooden club, and the atlatl, spear thrower. The strategic points were the river mouths and the fertile central plains. A successful invasion required the control of fresh water sources and the clearing of forests for agriculture. Part 3. The Dark Ages and the Medieval Period, circa 500 to 1450 CE. While Europe was in its Dark Ages, the Caribbean saw the rise of complex chiefdoms, cacicazgos. In Cuba, this period was defined by the expansion of the Taíno culture from the east, Oriente, toward the west. Successful internal takeover. The Taíno did not just invade, they assimilated. They changed the demographic group in charge by introducing a hierarchical social structure, the cacique, chief, the boitillos, priests, the nitaínos, nobles, and the naborias, commoners. This was a forceful coercion of culture and religion, zemi worship, that unified the island under a single technological and economic system before the Europeans arrived. Part 4. The Renaissance and the Spanish Conquest, 1492 to 1600. The invasion of Diego Velázquez in 1511 is the first documented modern military conquest of the island. The strategy of the cross and sword. Velázquez landed at Baracoa with 300 men. The Taíno, led by the refugee chief Hatui from Hispaniola, used the first recorded guerrilla tactics in the Americas. They utilized the dense tropical rainforests and the dog-tooth limestone, manigua, to ambush Spanish columns. Technology and supply. The Spanish had an insurmountable advantage in centers of military strength, the horse and the harquebus. However, their greatest weapon was biological, smallpox and measles. The food and fuel for the Spanish were the encomiendas, forced labor systems that turned the indigenous population into a logistical engine for their own destruction. Part 5. The 18th century and the British capture of Havana, 1762. The most successful external invasion by a foreign power occurred in 1762 during the 7 Years' War. The British Royal Navy under Admiral Pocock and the Earl of Albemarle targeted Havana. The Siege of El Morro. The British avoided a frontal assault on the harbor. Instead, they landed at Kohimar, east of the city, and dragged heavy siege guns up the La Cabaña Ridge. This gave them high ground advantage over the Castillo del Morro. Strategic points. The British identified that the key was not the city itself, but the fortress of El Morro. After 44 days of siege, they mined the walls and blew a breach. Havana surrendered. For 1 year, the British transformed Cuba's economy, opening it to free trade and the massive importation of enslaved Africans, a demographic shift that permanently altered the island's culture. Part 7. The 19th Century and the Spanish-American War, 1898. By the late 19th century, Cuba was the world's sugar bowl. The invasion of 1898 was a conflict of steam-powered ironclads and telegraphs. The internal revolution, before the Americans arrived, the Cuban Mambises, rebels, had already hollowed out Spanish control through a scorched earth policy. Led by Máximo Gómez and Antonio Maceo, the rebels burned cane fields to destroy the Spanish tax base. This was an economic war aimed at making the island ungovernable. The external invasion. The U.S. landed at Daiquiri and Siboney, east of Santiago de Cuba. The strategy was to trap the Spanish fleet in Santiago Harbor. The strategic points were the San Juan Heights. The U.S. utilized Krag-Jorgensen rifles and Gatling guns, while the Spanish used the superior Mauser. However, the U.S. Navy's destruction of Admiral Cervera's fleet made the Spanish position on land untenable. Part 7. The 20th Century and the 1959 Revolution. The 20th century saw the most successful internal takeover, the Cuban Revolution. This was not a conventional invasion, but a protracted people's war. Changing the demographic in charge. The 26th of July movement, led by Fidel Castro, changed the system of government by shifting power from the urban elite and U.S. interests to a rural peasant alliance. Logistics of the Sierra Maestra. The rebels utilized the transportation of mountain trails and the communication of Radio Rebelde. They targeted the main population centers by cutting the central highway and the railroads in the Battle of Santa Clara, 1958. By capturing a munitions train, Che Guevara severed the island's spine, leading to the collapse of the Batista regime. Part 8. The 21st century and the defense against the unnamed aggressor. How does a nation today stop an invasion by a peer competitor? The defense of 2026. To stop a modern invasion, the defender must exploit the literal. Subsurface mines, shore-to-ship missiles like the SSC-5 Stooge, and swarm drone boats are essential. Demographic and cultural defense. The ultimate defense is the unity of command and a deep defense mindset. If the unnamed attacker seizes Havana, they must still face a million-man militia in the Escambray Mountains. The defender's strategy must be to target the attacker's home front through cyber attrition and by dragging the conflict into a war of attrition that the attacker's domestic politics cannot sustain. Conclusion: the eternal sentinel. Cuba remains a fortress not because of its walls, but because of its terrain and the resilience of its people. From the Macana to the drone, the strategy remains the same. Use the island's geography to swallow the invader whole.
Coming soon, historic battle summaries put to music traditional to the war's time period. Available on Amazon audiobooks, my military history music YouTube channel War Scholar Music, and at warscholar.org. First up, the major battles of the American Revolution.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Military History Inside Out. Listeners are encouraged to research the precise details covered for themselves. We welcome all comments, questions, corrections, or criticism of the episode on any of our social media links. On Instagram at Chris Alvarez War Scholar, on X at War Scholar, on Facebook at warscholar.org. Please check back regularly for more episodes and provide likes where you can to support continued production of these episodes. Thank you for listening.